Okay. Everyone tells me you can't get a pawn license. They're like $1 million. I mean, I heard stories from anywhere $500,000 to $1 million. You got to wait for someone to die and get it from them.
For years, millions of viewers believed they knew exactly who Rick Harrison and Chumlee were. On television, they looked like the perfect team. One was the serious businessman, the other, the lovable prankster who always managed to lighten the mood. But behind the cameras, that picture wasn't nearly as simple. Long before police raids, shocking headlines, and rumors of a friendship falling apart, there were warning signs that almost no one noticed. People close to the pawn shop have described long periods where conversations became short, tensions quietly grew, and business always came before friendship. The public only saw the jokes, but the private reality was far more complicated. To understand how everything reached that breaking point, you have to go all the way back to Rick Harrison's childhood, a time when his future looked nothing like the empire he would eventually build. What happened during those early years shaped every decision he would make later. And that's where this unbelievable story truly begins. Rick Harrison wasn't born into fame or fortune. In fact, his biggest challenge arrived before he was even a teenager. At just 8 years old, severe epilepsy forced him to spend long stretches confined to his bed while other kids played outside. Instead of feeling sorry for himself, Rick discovered something that would quietly change his future forever: books. He became obsessed with history, military artifacts, coins, antiques, and the stories hidden behind ordinary-looking objects. While most children forgot what they read after a few days, Rick remembered nearly everything. That incredible memory eventually became one of his greatest strengths, allowing him to identify valuable collectibles with remarkable accuracy years later. Without realizing it, those lonely childhood days were creating the foundation for one of television's most recognizable experts. But another major change was waiting around the corner, and it would completely redirect his family's future. Because one move across the country would open a door nobody expected. After facing financial struggles, Rick's family packed up and headed to Las Vegas during the early 1980s. At the time, the city was growing fast, filled with tourists, gamblers, and people looking for quick cash after a lucky, or unlucky, night. Rick's father opened a small coin shop, hoping to build a stable business from rare coins and collectibles. Rick spent countless hours watching customers walk through those doors, carrying everything from jewelry to watches and unusual antiques. Before long, he noticed something important. Most people weren't just selling valuables. They needed money immediately. That simple observation completely changed the way Rick thought about business. Instead of focusing only on coins, he realized a full pawn shop could serve thousands of customers every year, while creating endless opportunities to buy fascinating historical items. The idea seemed risky, but Rick believed Las Vegas was the perfect place to make it work. What happened next would become the beginning of an incredible business empire. By the late 1980s, Rick convinced his father it was time to think bigger. After navigating licensing requirements and government regulations, they finally secured permission to open the gold and silver pawn shop on Las Vegas Boulevard. The location couldn't have been better. Sitting just minutes from the famous Strip, the shop attracted tourists, casino workers, collectors, and locals looking for fast cash around the clock. Every day brought completely different customers through the front door, and every item carried its own fascinating story. One moment someone would bring in an old family heirloom, while the next customer might arrive carrying a rare historical artifact worth thousands of dollars. Rick quickly realized that people weren't only interested in buying and selling, they loved hearing the stories behind every object. That realization would eventually become the secret ingredient that transformed an ordinary pawn shop into a television phenomenon. But before Hollywood ever came calling, Rick still had years of hard work ahead of him. Success didn't happen overnight. For nearly 2 decades, Rick worked exhausting hours behind the counter, often sacrificing sleep just to keep the business growing. Every negotiation mattered, because one bad deal could cost thousands of dollars. Over time, he became an expert at reading people just as well as he read antiques. A nervous glance, a shaky voice, or even a brief hesitation could reveal whether someone was telling the truth about an item's history or simply hoping to drive up the price. That ability earned Rick a reputation as one of Las Vegas's toughest negotiators. Customers respected him, competitors admired him, and collectors knew he possessed knowledge that few others could match. Still, Rick believed the pawn shop had even greater potential. He didn't just see valuable objects sitting on the shelves. He saw unforgettable stories that millions of people would eventually want to watch. And before long, one television opportunity would change everything forever. Rick had spent years mastering the pawn business, but he believed the real value of the shop wasn't just in buying and selling, it was in the stories hidden behind every item. While most people saw old watches, military medals, and dusty antiques, Rick saw history coming to life. That vision pushed him to pitch television producers over and over again, even after countless rejections. Many executives couldn't imagine a pawn shop becoming entertaining television. They thought viewers would lose interest after a few minutes. Rick disagreed completely. He believed the unpredictable customers, fascinating collectibles, and tense negotiations could create something audiences had never seen before. He refused to give up, knowing all it would take was one network willing to take a chance. After years of persistence, that opportunity finally arrived, and it would transform a local Las Vegas business into an international phenomenon. But once the cameras started rolling, nobody could have predicted who would become the show's biggest surprise. When Pawn Stars premiered in 2009, it didn't take long for viewers to become hooked. Every episode offered something different: a rare historical artifact, an emotional family heirloom, or a collector convinced they were sitting on a fortune. Rick quickly became known as the calm expert, who could identify almost anything placed on the counter. His father, known simply as the Old Man, delivered blunt honesty that fans couldn't get enough of, while Corey Harrison represented the next generation of the family business. Then there was Chumlee. At first, he appeared to be comic relief, constantly joking around and making mistakes that frustrated everyone else. But something unexpected happened. Instead of laughing at him, viewers connected with his personality. His humor, relaxed attitude, and unpredictable reactions made him impossible to ignore. Before long, Chumlee wasn't just another employee. He was becoming one of the biggest reasons fans tuned in every week. And that unexpected popularity would change everything inside the shop. As Pawn Stars exploded in popularity, Chumlee's fan base grew at an unbelievable pace. His face appeared on t-shirts, coffee mugs, hats, and countless pieces of merchandise that sold faster than anyone expected. Reports even suggested his merchandise outperformed the combined sales of several other cast members, proving he had become a brand all by himself. Rick immediately recognized the business opportunity and made the smart decision to invest in Chumlee's merchandise company instead of letting someone else profit from it. It was a move that benefited both men and strengthened their professional relationship. On the surface, everything looked perfect. The show dominated ratings. Tourists packed the gold and silver pawn shop every day, and the cast had become household names across America. But fame has a way of changing people, and the success that brought them closer publicly was quietly creating pressure behind closed doors. Because once millions of dollars entered the picture, keeping everyone happy became far more difficult than anyone expected. The bigger Pawn Stars became, the more pressure everyone felt. What had once been a small family-run pawn shop was suddenly operating like a global entertainment brand. Every episode attracted millions of viewers. Every appearance generated headlines. And every mistake had the potential to damage the show's reputation. Producers became increasingly involved, carefully selecting interesting items, coordinating filming schedules, and making sure every episode delivered enough excitement to keep audiences coming back. Off camera, however, life wasn't nearly as carefree as it appeared on television. Long workdays, constant travel, interviews, and endless fan attention began affecting relationships inside the shop. Personality differences that had once seemed harmless slowly became more noticeable. Rick remained focused on discipline and professionalism, while Chumlee preferred a much more relaxed approach. Those opposite personalities often clashed, even if viewers rarely noticed. But behind the scenes, the line between friendship and business was becoming harder to separate. Reality television often promises viewers an authentic look behind the scenes, but the truth is usually much more complicated. As Pawn Stars continued growing, producers realized that dramatic moments kept audiences watching longer. Certain conversations were shortened, reaction shots were emphasized, and ordinary disagreements sometimes appeared far more intense after careful editing. A simple disagreement over an item's value could look like a major argument once it reached television screens. That editing style helped create suspense, but it also fueled endless speculation among fans who believed every awkward silence or frustrated expression pointed to a secret feud. Rumors about growing tension between Rick and Chumlee spread across social media, with many viewers convinced the partnership was beginning to crack. At the time, those rumors seemed impossible to prove. Then, in 2016, everything changed overnight, when shocking headlines sent the entire Pawn Stars franchise into its biggest crisis ever. And what police discovered would leave fans completely stunned. Everything changed in March 2016. News broke that police had executed a search warrant at Chumlee's Las Vegas home after an investigation connected to a serious allegation. Fans who had spent years watching his goofy personality on television couldn't believe what they were reading. As officers searched the property, they reportedly discovered illegal substances, firearms, and other items that immediately shifted the focus of the investigation. Within hours, headlines spread across television, newspapers, and social media, turning one of reality TV's most recognizable faces into the center of a nationwide controversy. The contrast between Chumlee's fun-loving image and the details emerging from the investigation left viewers stunned. Suddenly, the future of Pawn Stars itself was being questioned. Many wondered whether the scandal would destroy everything Rick Harrison had spent decades building. The pressure inside the pawn shop became enormous, and nobody knew how the History Channel would respond. But the investigation wasn't as straightforward as many headlines suggested, and the legal story was only beginning to unfold. As more information surfaced, the public quickly realized there were two very different parts to the case. While the initial investigation had begun because of a separate allegation, prosecutors later announced that there wasn't enough evidence to pursue criminal charges related to that claim. Instead, attention shifted entirely to what investigators reportedly found during the search of Chumlee's home. Authorities announced multiple drug-related charges along with firearm-related offenses, and those allegations dominated headlines for weeks. Television networks replayed the story non-stop, while fans flooded social media with disbelief, disappointment, and endless speculation about what would happen next. Some feared Chumlee's television career was over before it had a chance to recover. Others wondered whether Rick Harrison would cut ties with someone he had known since childhood. Behind closed doors, the entire Pawn Stars brand was facing one of its biggest tests, and the courtroom would soon determine whether Chumlee had any chance of saving both his freedom and his career. A few months later, the legal battle reached a turning point. Rather than taking the case through a lengthy trial, Chumlee accepted a plea agreement that dramatically changed the outcome. He pleaded guilty to one felony firearm offense and one misdemeanor involving attempted drug possession. In exchange, he avoided immediate prison time but accepted strict conditions that included probation, counseling, and the surrender of the firearms and illegal substances recovered during the search. It was a decision that carried enormous consequences. Any violation of the agreement could have resulted in years behind bars, making every step forward incredibly important. The courtroom outcome gave Chumlee a narrow path toward rebuilding his life, but public opinion was another challenge entirely. Millions of viewers had already formed their own conclusions, and restoring trust would take far more than signing legal paperwork. Meanwhile, everyone waited to see how Rick Harrison would react to the biggest crisis the show had ever faced. Many people expected Rick Harrison to immediately distance himself from Chumlee in order to protect the reputation of the gold and silver pawn shop. Instead, his first public comments surprised almost everyone. Rather than rushing to judgment, Rick explained that not all the facts were known and that he wanted to support someone he had considered part of his extended family for years. It wasn't an emotional speech or a dramatic defense. Instead, it reflected the complicated position he found himself in. On one side stood a global television brand with millions of viewers and valuable business partnerships. On the other stood a longtime friend who had helped make Pawn Stars one of the biggest reality shows in television history. Rick understood that every word he spoke would be analyzed by fans, reporters, and business partners alike. Whatever decision he made next could shape the future of the franchise itself. But supporting Chumlee publicly didn't mean their relationship escaped the pressure building behind closed doors. Although Rick chose to stand beside Chumlee during the legal process, that didn't mean everything returned to normal overnight. Behind the scenes, the scandal forced difficult conversations about trust, responsibility, and protecting a business that had taken decades to build. Rick had always expected professionalism from everyone working at the pawn shop, and suddenly one employee's personal decisions had placed the entire company's reputation under a microscope. Friends of the show have described Rick as someone who separates emotions from business whenever possible. But even for him, this situation was different. Chumlee wasn't simply another employee. He had been part of the Harrison family's world since childhood. That long history made the decision far more complicated than outsiders realized. While the cameras continued rolling, both men had to rebuild confidence, not only with each other, but with viewers who questioned whether the partnership could ever recover completely. And the hidden tensions that existed long before the scandal were about to become impossible to ignore. Long before the 2016 headlines, the relationship between Rick and Chumlee had already become more complicated than viewers realized. Rick built his reputation by demanding discipline, punctuality, and professionalism. Every item in the shop represented money, and every mistake could damage the business. Chumlee, on the other hand, thrived on spontaneity. His laid-back personality made him a fan favorite, but it also clashed with Rick's strict management style. Viewers often laughed when Rick scolded Chumlee over a misplaced item or a careless comment, assuming it was just another entertaining moment for the cameras. In reality, those disagreements reflected two completely different approaches to work. Rick wanted consistency, while Chumlee preferred to rely on instinct and humor. Neither approach was entirely wrong, but mixing those personalities inside one high-pressure business created friction that slowly built over the years. Even so, both men understood they needed each other to keep the show successful. But the growing fame surrounding Chumlee would soon make those differences even harder to manage. As Pawn Stars continued breaking ratings records, Chumlee transformed from comic relief into a celebrity in his own right. Fans lined up for autographs, merchandise featuring his image sold in huge numbers, and public appearances attracted crowds wherever he went. Suddenly, he wasn't simply Rick Harrison's employee anymore. He had become one of the show's biggest attractions. That level of fame naturally changed his confidence and opened new opportunities outside the pawn shop. Meanwhile, Rick remained focused on protecting the business that had taken decades to build. Their priorities slowly began moving in different directions. Chumlee enjoyed the spotlight and everything that came with it, while Rick stayed focused on negotiations, inventory, and maintaining the shop's reputation. Neither man publicly admitted to major disagreements, but people close to the business have described periods when communication became noticeably strained. Success had given both of them incredible opportunities, yet it had also created challenges that few viewers could see. And as the pressure increased, rumors about growing tension began spreading faster than ever. Fans are incredibly observant, and it didn't take long for viewers to start analyzing every interaction between the cast. A short conversation, an awkward silence, or a serious facial expression quickly became evidence for countless online theories claiming Rick and Chumlee were secretly feuding. Social media only fueled the speculation, with videos and articles picking apart old episodes in search of hidden clues. Some former employees and industry insiders later suggested there were periods when cast members spoke only when business required it, especially during stressful filming schedules. Whether those stories were exaggerated or not, one thing became clear. The pressure of running a successful business while starring in one of television's biggest reality shows wasn't always easy. Constant cameras, demanding production schedules, and millions of viewers judging every move created an environment where even small disagreements could seem much bigger than they really were. Yet despite all the rumors, there was another side of their relationship that rarely received the same attention. Behind Rick's tough personality was someone who had quietly helped shape Chumlee's entire career. Long before television fame, Rick taught him how to negotiate, calculate profit margins, recognize valuable collectibles, and avoid costly mistakes. Those lessons weren't always delivered gently. Rick believed the best way to prepare someone for business was through accountability, even if it meant offering harsh criticism. Chumlee has acknowledged over the years that many of the skills he developed came directly from working alongside Rick every day. Looking back, it's easier to understand why their relationship survived moments that might have ended other partnerships. Beneath the disagreements was years of trust built through shared experiences, family connections, and countless hours working side by side. Rick wasn't simply a boss. He had become one of the biggest influences on Chumlee's professional life. But television doesn't always show relationships as they truly exist, and that's where the story becomes even more surprising. One of the biggest misconceptions about reality television is that viewers are watching every event exactly as it happened. In truth, producers spend countless hours selecting reactions, trimming conversations, and arranging scenes to create the most entertaining story possible. A simple disagreement can appear like a major confrontation, while ordinary conversations often never make it to the final episode. Pawn Stars was no different. The chemistry between Rick, Chumlee, Corey, and the rest of the cast helped make the series a massive success. But editing naturally emphasized conflict, because conflict keeps audiences watching. That doesn't mean every tense moment was fake, but it does mean viewers only saw a carefully crafted version of reality. Looking back after all these years, it's clear that their relationship included frustration, respect, loyalty, and genuine friendship all at once. And despite every scandal, rumor, and setback, what happened next proved that their partnership was far stronger than most people ever imagined. By the time 2019 arrived, Chumlee had successfully completed the conditions of his probation and counseling, marking the end of the most difficult legal chapter of his life. For many public figures, a scandal of that magnitude can permanently damage a career. But this story took a different turn. Instead of disappearing from the spotlight, Chumlee gradually rebuilt his reputation by staying out of further legal trouble and returning to work. Fans who expected him to vanish from Pawn Stars were surprised to see him continue appearing alongside Rick Harrison. That alone sent a strong message. Despite everything that had happened, Rick believed in giving someone he had known for decades another chance. It wasn't about pretending the controversy never happened. It was about recognizing that people can learn from serious mistakes. That decision wasn't universally praised, but it demonstrated the loyalty that had always existed beneath their complicated working relationship. Still, the biggest question remained: could the show itself survive such a public storm and continue attracting millions of viewers? Against all expectations, Pawn Stars refused to slow down. While many reality shows disappear after just a few seasons, the History Channel series continued producing new episodes and attracting visitors from around the world to the famous gold and silver pawn shop. Tourists still lined up outside hoping to meet the cast or witness a memorable negotiation firsthand. The show's success proved that audiences remained fascinated by rare collectibles, fascinating history, and the chemistry between its familiar personalities. Even after facing major controversies, the franchise adapted and kept moving forward. Rick Harrison continued serving as the knowledgeable face of the business, while Chumlee slowly rebuilt public trust through consistent appearances and a noticeably more mature image. Their ability to keep working together surprised many critics who believed the partnership had been permanently damaged. Instead, the show demonstrated that resilience can sometimes be stronger than scandal. But another major change inside the franchise would make Rick and Chumlee's partnership even more important than before. As the years passed, the dynamic inside Pawn Stars naturally evolved. Cast members pursued personal interests, schedules changed, and new projects expanded the brand beyond the walls of the Las Vegas pawn shop. Shows like Pawn Stars Do America allowed Rick and Chumlee to travel across the country searching for extraordinary collectibles while introducing viewers to entirely new stories. Their willingness to continue working side by side spoke louder than any interview ever could. People who genuinely can't stand each other rarely choose to launch new projects together, especially when millions of viewers are watching. Every episode reminded fans that, despite years of rumors and headlines, the partnership still existed. It wasn't perfect, and neither man ever claimed it was. Like any long-term friendship, it had survived disagreements, setbacks, and enormous public pressure. Yet somehow, they continued finding common ground through the business they had helped build together. And that makes the real lesson behind their story far different from what many people first believed. Looking back today, it's clear that the biggest threat to Rick and Chumlee's relationship wasn't one single event. It was years of pressure created by fame, business responsibilities, constant filming, and the enormous expectations that came with becoming reality television stars. The 2016 scandal may have been the most public crisis, but it simply exposed challenges that had been quietly building behind the scenes for years. Through it all, Rick remained focused on protecting the business, while Chumlee worked to rebuild both his personal life and his public image. Their journey serves as a reminder that reality television often captures only part of the story. Cameras record dramatic moments, but they rarely show the private conversations, difficult decisions, and genuine loyalty that happen once filming stops. In many ways, what audiences missed was just as important as what they actually saw on screen. And that's exactly why the final chapter of this story changes everything people thought they knew. For years, fans believed the story of Rick Harrison and Chumlee could be summed up by a few dramatic headlines or a handful of tense television moments. But the truth is far more complicated. Their relationship was never built on perfection. It was built on decades of friendship, business, trust, disagreements, and second chances. Yes, there were moments that threatened to tear everything apart. Yes, the legal controversy placed the future of Pawn Stars under an intense spotlight. But despite the rumors, the speculation, and the constant media attention, the partnership endured. Rick chose loyalty when many expected him to walk away, while Chumlee was given an opportunity to rebuild his life and prove that one chapter doesn't have to define an entire future. Whether you agree with every decision or not, their story remains one of the most remarkable behind-the-scenes journeys in reality television. If you enjoyed uncovering the untold side of this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into the stories Hollywood doesn't want you to hear.